Okay, this video is going to show you how to process the data after it's been extracted. So that would be the previous video. So at this point we have all of our startle values and we've laid down the tracks for our categories within each trial. One of the things I didn't mention in the last video is it might be good to see where there's a startle per trial and where there is not. So I'm going to go back to my specific order and copy down the 1 being there was a startle presented and the 0 being no startle presented. I'm going to paste it over here, and that's going to let me know what startle trials there was, what trials were there that no startle was administered. And I'll be able to later on delete these. Okay, so this is going to conclude this video with the data extraction period. In the next video we're going to discuss how to start to calculate the startle values. And I'm going to decide to actually reject this trial. We've got a lot of very good clean data. I can see that most of our trials don't have this contamination from a natural blink that was not startle induced. So for this trial I'm going to reject. I can see I'm at 772. So I can go to my Excel sheet, go to 772 seconds, and I can see that it was an alcohol image. And now, rather than putting an X, I'm actually going to put an R for rejected, just to remind myself later on why it was removed. Okay, here's another trial that we have to take into consideration. We know our startle probe was administered here. It was initiated. Now you see this little bump that's occurring prior to when we would expect the startle response. That means that a natural blink began at a point where we wouldn't, it isn't directly related to the startle probe. This could theoretically take away from the amplitude of the startle. So we need to consider whether or not we're going to reject this trial because of this natural blink that occurred during a period of time that is not related to the induction of a startle. Okay, trial 2 is going to get into our first choice point. So I can see, when I'm looking at the startle, I can see where the startle probe was administered, and I see one good startle that occurred there. That's an induced startle response. But now I see a second peak, and it's larger. And my first concern is going to be, did we have a window that captured the second non-induced startle value? Now what I can do is I can actually look at my delta T and get a rough estimate. I'll start with my selection, and in the previous videos we said we went out 150 milliseconds, so I can roughly go to 150. You can see the value changing in the top right, and I can see that it's only capturing this induced startle. So I know this trial is good, even though there was a very close non-induced startle, that this first one is the only thing that was captured by our algorithm we created in the earlier videos. When I go to my first experimental trial, which is at 210, and compare it to my Excel file, I can see my new list that says 210 for seconds there. There's a 0, which means there was no startle probe administered, which means we're not going to be collecting any of this data. And I can, when I click on it and look at it manually, see there's no startle here. So this is the first deviation that you might see when you're looking at your trials. This just means no startle probe was administered. You may see some natural blinks here, but if you don't see a probe being administered, if this is flat, that means there was no startle probe given to the participant, and again that would be indicated by a 0 right next to our trial. I'm actually going to go and make sure I don't use any of this data that has a 0 next to it, and I'm going to put some X's just so it can't calculate what my actual values are. I don't do it by mistake. Now one of the problems that you're going to notice is that when we pull the times of administration into the Excel and we compare it to our event list from Biopac where we can click on each trial, we can see that once it gets into the minute range, so starting with trial 6, that the event list keeps it in seconds the whole way down, but our trial keeps it, or starts to convert to minutes. So what we can do is we can actually create a new column where we go equals C2, and we say times 60. Now the first few events on our Excel list, they're not going to be relevant because we already have the conversion made, but we can drag down, and now we can see once we get to our trial that converts to minutes, which will start at trial 6, that we'll actually have a better reference point which keeps it in seconds. So I can say 108, and then I can look over here and I can see that it's 108, rather than having to do some conversion. 129, 129, so that can be helpful for identifying which trial you're on. Okay, to make analyzing each trial more efficient, I'm actually going to go all the way to the right here and click on this where the left and right arrow is, one more over, and this will pull up my individual trials. Now I can just click on the trials where we laid down markers, which is shown in the previous videos. It can go straight to that trial, so I don't have to hunt around for the specific trials I'm looking for. Okay, in this next step, what we're going to do is start to analyze all of our startle values individually. The first thing we need to be aware of is we don't necessarily even need to look at the habituation trials. We're not going to be using any of this data. This is only to bring their tonic startle level to a reasonable level that won't modulate from just its tonic element. And we're going to start with startle trial 1. I'm going to show you some different types of startle values and whether or not we need to eliminate them or they could be problematic.